Welcome to Creative Broadcasting, the station of unlimited possibilities. Presents Creating Your Seat at the Table with your host, Ashley Little, as she welcomes her guest to the table.
Welcome to Creating Your Seat at the Table. I am your host, Ashley Little. A little bit about myself: corporate professional by day, serial entrepreneur by night, six-time best-selling author, CEO and founder of Ashley Little Enterprises, LLC, owner and creator of Creative Broadcasting, and founder and owner of Talk Radio and TV Network, LLC. Tonight we have an amazing special VIP guest by the name of Darren Walker. Darren Walker is the youngest of 6 children and was born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana. Darren is an innovative real estate investor who oversees a multi-million-dollar portfolio in New Orleans. He recently starred in a DIY network hit show, Louisiana Flip and Move, where he and his wife Lucy demonstrated their real estate and renovation prowess throughout Louisiana. In addition to real estate, Mr. Walker has garnered entrepreneur success in the fresh food industry. Darren co-founded Zoe's Queso, an all-natural queso dip that is now in over 300 stores, including Whole Foods. Most recently, Darren has turned his passion to building the Being Now application. Being is a social networking movement that aims to build economic empowerment in Black communities all over the world. Darren has been happily married for 13 years to Lucy Walker, with whom he has 2 precious daughters, Desiree and Liv. Darren and his family now live in Medellin, Colombia, where he is learning Spanish in order to connect with the Afro-Spanish-speaking population around the world. Welcome to the table, Darren Walker.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me, Ashley. I appreciate it.
You are welcome.
Thank you for this opportunity.
You are welcome. I'm excited to have you here because I know that you're going to share some nuggets with our audience tonight. So can you please tell us about your entrepreneur journey?
Oh, yeah. I started in entrepreneurship as a little kid. I was selling my brother's drawings when I was in 1st and 2nd grade. So it kind of started there. It's like the only time I got in trouble in school is, if I was selling something. My mom had a daycare, and she ran it out of our house. And so I'm the youngest of 6 kids, and, born and raised in New Orleans. And in this daycare, which was located in New Orleans, when you got off home from school, you had to work the daycare. It kind of that was what you signed up for, being a part of the family or in the house. And so I worked hand in hand with my mom from probably, I guess, the time I was 8 to maybe 14, 15 years old, and helped her put in, late fee structures because the parents wouldn't pick their kids up on time, and I couldn't go outside and play until the parents showed up. And I'm like, Mom, you're being too nice. And so it was just, I didn't realize it at the time, but a lot of that was grooming me and preparing me for business. And so that was some of the early days, and just kind of being groomed by my mom in business. And it's been, the entrepreneurial journey it's wild, right? I mean, it's just, I've tried a number of different things. I've sold vacuum cleaners door to door. I mean, I've pretty much done it all. But I found my home in real estate and insurance and financial service products. And I ended up having a financial service agency with Prudential Financial. And then, Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, and the city was devastated. And there was just so much opportunity in terms of rebuilding the city. And so that was how I got my initial introduction into real estate. I was 20 years old at the time.
I love it. Amazing journey. So, Darren, you are an innovative real estate investor who oversees a multi-million-dollar portfolio. So tell us more about your passion for real estate.
Yeah, so that kind of happened. So my wife's dad was in construction, and he told me, he says, hey, listen, me and my wife wanted to get married. We were young. I was 20 years old. She was 20. And, we were just running completely off of love. And he says, if you want to marry my daughter, you're going to have to own a house. And, she lives in a house now, and, I want you to own a house. And he was trying to help me, structure some goals and things like that. And so I'm like, all right, that's fine. I thought it was crazy at first. I'm like, man, you didn't own a house when you married your wife, but he's like, listen, these are the rules. And so 6 months later, we looked up, and I actually ended up buying my former teacher's house. He was Sergeant Guillory, and I bumped into him, and I actually just mentioned to him in the conversation that, I'm looking to buy a house, and he said, I'm looking to sell a house. And so he said, well, come by and check it out. And checked it out, and probably about 45, 60 days later, we were going to closing, and I was 20 years old. It was 1 month before my 21st birthday, and so I bought that house, and I rented it out until my wife and I got married later the next year. But that was that initial seed in terms of I was 20 years old, I had a tenant that was in there, and I was making this passive cash flow from this property, and, I wasn't working for it. I was working hard at that time. I was working really hard, but it was nice to get that $350, $400 a month that I wasn't trading my time for. And so it was at that time I really started understanding that you get paid for your value and not your time, or you should. You should get paid for your value and not your time. And so that kind of put me on a path and a passion for economic independence. I ever since I was a young kid, being the youngest of six, sometimes you're subject to not having enough to go around to everybody. And so I think as I was getting older, just not wanting my kids to have to go through the same things and struggles and challenges that I went through. Like, for instance, I was 11 years old. There was, I don't say diagnosed, but it was determined I failed the vision test. So, it impacted my sports. It impacted my life. But it wasn't corrected until I was 19, until I was old enough to kind of, I was on my own feet and getting things done. And a lot of that is just, the systemic effect of poverty. And so I just wanted something that was different for my family. And that's, I think, where that passion really came from, and saying, hey, listen, it's going to be different for my kids and my wife and so forth.
I love that. And that's so important, like creating that generational wealth and that legacy, even though you didn't understand it at first, but it pushed you out there, right? Her father.
Oh, absolutely. And and one other piece on the real estate front is that the, getting that first house, kind of getting the appetite wet for that. Once Katrina happened, the challenge that I had was I had no working capital. And so, which is something most entrepreneurs find themselves in. And so it became where I'm like, okay, I don't have working capital, but what do I have? I have a good name, I have integrity, people trust me, people like me. And so I ended up finding an investor who was willing to work with me, and she basically loaned me, we became partners, $100,000. I was 24 years old. And it was an unprecedented sort of situation because at this time, even though just a few years prior I had purchased a house and stuff like that, I was married, but I was in a financial situation where we were just always a day late and a dollar short, and we were just broke and always missing the opportunity. And so I asked my wife, like, babe, maybe we can move in with your parents. They got a nice big house. Like, maybe we can move over there and try to save some money because we just can't live like this. And I feel like I'm repeating the same pattern that my parents were. And so what ended up happening was, we ended up moving in with them, and it wasn't too much later than that when I got this investor who partnered with me. And there was a program in the state of Louisiana that provided financing to develop low-income or mixed-use neighborhoods. And so I ended up taking that $100,000 investment and essentially turned it into $1 million over about an 18-month period of time. But it was accelerated because I partnered with the vision of the state, and so that's how it happened so rapidly, where I was able to build a portfolio that it's worth what it's worth and paid for at such an early age is in large part aligning my vision with basically the government's vision.
I love that. So, Darren, what are some strategies you would give to listeners who are aspiring real estate investors?
What I would say is just kind of start where you are, and what I mean by that is a lot of times people they go out of their league, or they think that the only way they can make money is if they have a property that's in the best neighborhood or best part of town. And a lot of times that's just not the case, especially when you're first starting out. People ask me, well, Darren, what's your secret? And my secret is that it's all in the numbers. So if I can find a single that the return on investment works, then I'll buy that single. Now, if I can get a duplex or a fourplex or a greater unit, and then, that's great as well, and I would love to have that. But sometimes when I'm trying to get that first deal done or that second deal done, you just got to start where you are. And, I've had properties that I've purchased in New Orleans where initially I was scared to go into the neighborhood, to be honest with you. And a lot of times people hear, location, 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 location. That is true to an extent. But sometimes doesn't mean you're going to own that property forever. You may end up selling it later. But a lot of times it is the thing that gets you on the pathway. And so I think sometimes people overanalyze and they want to find the perfect deal when the reality is, I'm not saying to be hasty, but do your due diligence. If the numbers work, then, hey, go ahead and get started because there's just so many benefits to home ownership, to real estate ownership in terms of equity, leverage, tax benefits, and, the list just goes on. So I would say to that person, get started, get there, make sure their credit is, everything is, in order, and look to pull the trigger, when that deal makes itself available.
Great advice, and I'm sure, hopefully our listeners are writing these amazing nuggets down that Darren is sharing tonight. So, Darren, what are some of the pros and cons of being a real estate investor?
The pros are the passive income that it creates, the tax benefits that it creates. Let's start with passive income. I live in Medellin, Colombia, and I've been here since July 30th of 2019. So I guess right at about 8 months. And for the last few years, my wife and I have lived off of our portfolio, real estate portfolio primarily. And that there's no other way I could live in Colombia, in South America, 2,000 some odd miles away, from my home and my properties, if it wasn't for real estate. But real estate has afforded us that opportunity. So the ability to get paid, not for your time, but for the value that you provide. The other thing is the tax benefits. So, when you own property, you're able to earn a living and then, kind of pay your taxes at the end, as opposed to, paying all your taxes first and then having to live on the rest. So I would think the tax incentives are major, especially for those people who are like 1099 earners. It just has an enormous impact on how much money they're able to keep because the laws were written by the wealthy, essentially, and for the wealthy. So to align yourself with their agenda, so to speak, is just always a good idea. And then I would say appreciation. The thing that's really cool about real estate is that, you have the appreciation part so that it's, if your money is just in a checking account or a savings account and it's not earning anything, then inflation is going to essentially sort of erode your foundation. But if you have your money into real estate, where most likely you'll be able to get, a 12 to 15% return conservatively, then you're going to always stay a step ahead of inflation and keep your portfolio growing. So I would say that's probably the top three things.
Great. So for those listeners that are listening that are probably new, we might have some of the newbies that are listening. So what can listeners invest in real estate with no money? For those people that are interested in wanting to make a career in the real estate investment industry, can they start with no money?
Can they start with no money?
I know you have wholesale too, so
there you go.
Yeah.
And that's where I was going to go, because so they can benefit from real estate with no money. I wouldn't call a wholesaler an investor, but they can act, so they're not getting the tax benefits and things like that, but they can get in the game, with no money. But I would I guess just challenge that person to say, you know what, I mean, I was 20 years old when I bought my house. I was making, probably $12 an hour. It's just they can get the money. I feel like it's almost like my father-in-law challenged me. It's like, okay, so you may not have the money now, so you wholesale, you cut grass on the weekends, you do whatever you have to do, but we can get the money for what we want to get the money for, and for financial freedom, for their family, for their future, for what they want. I would challenge them to get that down payment, because it's really not a lot. In a lot of cases, you're talking about 2-3%, and with the situation that we're dealing with right now, you may be even talking about less percent down in buying a first property.
And speaking of that, I'm glad that you touched base on, things that are going on in America right now. So with everything that's going on in America right now, is this a good time to be in the real estate industry?
I would say so. I think it's always a good time, but I would say yes. I would say it's a great time to be in real estate, but I would also say that if a person has some discretionary cash, that it's a great time to enter the stock market, because, as we've seen over the last few days and last few weeks, the market has absolutely crashed. And so if the person isn't currently there, it's a great time to enter. You have oil and gas stocks that are at record lows, that, there's a lot of great opportunities that 1 year from now people are going to wish they would have taken advantage of, on the stock front. On the real estate front, I think it's always a great time. People are going to need housing. There are going to be a lot of people, you have the traveling nurses that are going from state to state that need places to stay. There's going to be a lot of opportunity. And so I would absolutely say if a person can buy a home during this season, absolutely look into it. And then the other part is that to make sure, if at all possible, to check in with that particular municipality if they are approved for Airbnb, because that's another way that you can leverage your real estate and maximize profits, is through the short-term rental business.
I love that. And can you go more into the short-term rental? Because, you have the Airbnb side. There's so many different types, right?
Right. So I before moving to Medellin, I had 2 Airbnbs or 2 short-term rentals, and they were phenomenal. One of them was a house that I guess years ago I purchased for $10,000. It was one of those neighborhoods that I was initially scared to go into a decade ago. And unfortunately, it was been completely gentrified, and the values just skyrocketed in that particular place. And so Airbnb became a very, very popular thing. And so, yeah, I mean, you have short-term rental. I would say Airbnb is the easiest way to go because, I mean, it's just the demand on there, especially if you're in a city that has a lot of tourism, things like that. A lot of conferences, corporate executives and things like that coming to the city. There's a lot of money to be made, and the place doesn't have to be that fancy, this particular house that I'm talking about, it wasn't, super special, but it was clean, it was nice, it was cozy, and it did very well.
So, and another, for people that, because we have people that are new on, that are listening, and we have people that are already investors that are listening. So, do you recommend someone, if they wanted to start into real estate, to get their real estate license, or do you think they don't have to do that? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? If they want to grow in the industry and get to a good level?
I don't have a real estate license. I think that it's great, though, because just the education that they'll get in getting a real estate license is very helpful. And the more education, the better. But I definitely wouldn't say that it's necessary. Just kind of understanding some of the basic principles, is sufficient to get started. And basic principles, mainly just understanding return on investment. I think that's the most important thing they need to understand, is just understanding the numbers. But if they can get the license, I think that's I mean, that's a major step in the right direction, especially if they want to utilize it as a way to, kind of buy deals, from themselves essentially, and always have access to the MLS and things like that. So, that's a great first step. But if you don't have that, or, not interested in getting that, just partner with a good real estate agent, someone who, you like, and, let them know what your goals are. Hey, I'm looking for a single, I'm looking for a double, or whatever it is, and, have that person go to work for you. Make sure that, you have your pre-approval in place from the bank so that when those deals pop up, you can take action immediately. Because a lot of times, if you're not prepared, then, other investors will get in, and because they already have that pre-approval letter, or they already have, the proof of funds available, and then they'll scoop that deal up if you're having to sort of scramble to get that documentation together. It's always best if you have that stuff in place, and then when you find something that you like, you see, you're able to, make a move on it.
Great advice, great advice. So you are the CEO and founder of the Being Now application. So please tell us more about your amazing app and how we can support and purchase.
Absolutely. So yeah, Being is an app that I created to economically empower, Black communities all over the world, essentially making it easier for businesses to get the proper exposure that they need for economic advancement. I found that just in my entrepreneurial journey, there was a time where I had the Series 6 and 63 investment licenses when I was doing the insurance and financial practice, and I just saw that there was just gross misrepresentation, or just a lack of representation within the Black community in our space, in the financial arena. And just getting into real estate and understanding the importance of ownership, I realized that, when I looked at the social media and the tech space, where, so many of us, including myself, spend a lot of time, yet we have very little ownership in, there's things like Black Twitter, hashtag Black Twitter, but even those things, it's just a hashtag, there's no equity there. And then they have these reports that comes out and says, well, Facebook only hires 2% of African Americans in their tech department, or, Twitter is not favorable amongst minorities in terms of hiring practices. And my thing is that, although that isn't right, and, they have a social responsibility, but yet because they own it, then it's their prerogative to do what they want to do because they own it. And so I thought that in creating Being, Being stands for Black Economic Advancement Network, creating a social network that we could own that was centered on economic advancement for our community around the world. So that realizing that our data is worth dollars, and that every like, every comment, every shared post is empowering a particular community. And so my goal was to, create exposure so that we could easily find each other around the world. You look at Essence. Essence comes to New Orleans, and a lot of times we'll see people passing out flyers, for others to find Black-owned businesses in New Orleans. When in 2019 and 2020, there's no need to pass out a flyer when you should be able to open up an app and it'll tell you those businesses that are within a 2-mile radius from you. But then not just there, not just a directory. Being is not just a directory. You have the social component, so that when I go to that restaurant and the food's good and I take a picture with my friends, I'm going to post that on Being, because as a result, in other words, I'm an owner of Being, and I'm speaking from the shareholders' perspective, as Being is selling shares right now. But they have the economic incentive to cause this platform to grow, or want this platform to grow. So not only do they have the moral incentive, is that, hey, I want to spend more of my dollars within my community, but I have the economic incentive that, hey, I'm an owner of this platform. So as it grows, my economic benefit grows as well. So that's really the thing with Being, is that we're looking to create an economic ecosystem where businesses can be easily identified, they can be supported or empowered, and then also we celebrate that empowerment in terms of the platform. So it's just that's the vision of what we're looking to do, and we're looking to do it all over the world. I'm here in Colombia, where there are almost right under 5 million Afro-Colombians, And it's just amazing to see that, we're doing great things all over the world, but now Bean can be a place where it's all facilitated and we will own it. It's not just, we're creating a cool culture and a cool vibe, but yet not have the ownership of it.
Because it's all about ownership, and I love that. And so where do you see Bean in 5 years?
I see Bean in 5 years being a financial empowerment place. And what I mean by that is that 5 years from now, having developed this ecosystem that we can take businesses that we want to be a part of or that we need within our community, we can create them within the Bean Network, we can fund them within the Bean Network, and then we can benefit from the shares of that corporation as it thrives. So we take a car wash, for example, and let's say we say, hey, there's a need for 10 automated car washes from New Orleans to Jackson, Mississippi, for instance. And say, okay, well, we go to the Bean Exchange or Bean Investors, and we say, okay, we need 10,000 investors at $1,000. That's $10 million. And we build out those 10 car washes from New Orleans to Jackson. And now, the next time I go to get my car wash, where am I going to go? I'm going to go where I have ownership. And so the idea is that just like you have Netflix originals and they're, just spawning off all of these movies, that's what I see with Bean. I see with Bean finding the up-and-coming stars, up-and-coming entrepreneurs within our community, up-and-coming singers, up-and-coming, entrepreneurs, and giving them a platform to empower them and the resources for them to go out and succeed.
I love that, and I'm sure that Bean is going to do some great things. So where can our listeners go to download your app and purchase it?
Absolutely. So Bean is a free app. You can go to the Apple Store, and you can go to the Android Play Store and search Bean now. If you would follow me, connect with me, I'll be your first follow on Bean. I'm Darren Walker 504, and you can go to the Apple Store and search Bean now, and also in the Android Play market.
So please download the app today and spread the word about the Bean Now app. Darren is doing some amazing things, so definitely connect with him and download it today. So, Darren, you built multiple tables for yourself. So I asked all of my guests this question. How did you create your seat at the table?
That's a great question. I would say that with it's sort of a multifaceted approach. One, faith, because I think in my circumstances, I didn't have necessarily any particular, it wasn't because of education, it wasn't because I graduated from a prestigious school or anything like that, but I had faith in God. I had faith that there was more for my life, and that faith sort of spawned a determination to succeed. And I think that really believing in yourself. I find that a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in the social media era, focus too much on other people's perspective of them. And I think that just taking that energy and not worrying what other people think about what they're doing or realizing their value, but that person understanding their value and not losing any of that energy to any distractions that are on the outside. I would say that is how I feel like the strongest thing that brought me to the table, because others said, I had people tell me flat out, oh, you'll never be a millionaire. Oh, one guy even went as far as to tell me, he said, I know where you work, and, you'll be 60-something years old before you're ever a millionaire. And I said, man, you don't know my life. You don't know the doors that are going to open for me. You don't know, the opportunities that will be presented. So I think just pushing out the other voices and really digging deep and, and believing in yourself is the way to get to the table.
Absolutely, pushing out the other voice and distractions. And right now, since all this is going on, I think our listeners need to be mindful of that, right? That crowd control and, making sure that you stay focused and ignore those distractions. There's a lot of them right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right.
Yes. So what did failure teach you on your journey? Because, we all have a process. So what did failure teach you?
Failure was definitely the greatest teacher. It taught me humility. It taught me, it was because of failure that I got into real estate. It's funny, but 10 years ago, I exited the stock market. It's been 10 years since I got back in. When I exited, I was living at my in-laws and was in a bad financial place. And then because I lost the last little bit of money that we did have in the stock market during the '08 crash. So I guess that's about almost 12 years ago now. And that was probably the single largest failure at that time in my life that it pushed me into real estate. I was so angry. I was so disappointed in myself because I lost 6 months of me and my wife's combined income on a pharmaceutical options trade that I was doing, and a lot of mistakes there. But I learned from them, and it hurt. It hurt like hell. My wife wrote me this letter, and I took a picture of it. I still have it to this day, just saying how she said, "Darren, we didn't do anything wrong. It was all a part of the risk, and we tried." But I promised her, I said, "Babe, we'll never be in this situation ever again." And so I would say that failure is so important. John Maxwell talks about failing forward. I think oftentimes when people get tripped up with failure is that they stop. And so they stop at their last failure as opposed to getting up, dusting themselves off, and then reinventing themselves, studying that failure, and figuring out, hey, you know what? If it didn't work this way, then I'm just going to approach it another way. But I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep evolving until I win.
I love that. And so what did success teach you? Because, failure taught you to keep evolving, right, and to fail forward. So what did success teach you? Because you're very successful.
What does success teach? I've found that success doesn't teach as much as failure. I found that success has taught me that the journey is really special, and that it's wonderful to have, to be doing really cool things and traveling and all of the cool things I've been able to experience, and I'm so thankful for that. But I found that sometimes you experience a lot of cool things, and then you realize, man, along the journey, even though you may not be at your goal, but just be sure to live in the moment. Don't just forecast so much into the future, of where I'm going and where I'm going to be and who I'm going to be, that in that moment you're not smelling the roses or you're not taking time just to appreciate the process. Because the process is really sometimes in many ways more valuable than actually achieving the goal in a way. So yeah, I would, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you for sharing it and shining light to that. So we are in a new year, new decade of 2020, Darren. So what can we expect from you in this new year of 2020?
In 2020, we're trying to blow it up. We're trying to get Being to just we want Being everywhere. We want people pouring in on the platform and really showing love for our community, showing love for each other, eliminating all competitiveness and self-hatred, and just pouring in the love on our community and showing how great we are as a people, and just spreading the word about Being, highlighting entrepreneurs and enterprises that are within our community, and just lifting them up and giving them the proper love and respect that they deserve.
Yes, and I can't wait to see all the great things that you're about to do in this year of 2020. So for our listeners that are listening, make sure you connect with Darren Walker. He is definitely somebody to know and connect with. So Darren, would you please tell our listeners how they can follow you and support you on all social media platforms?
Absolutely. Yeah, so on Bean, I am Darren Walker 504. You can search Darren Walker, and you'll find me there. On Instagram, I'm Darren Walker 504, and on Facebook, simply Darren Walker. And I would love to connect with you, and see you, just excel beyond your wildest dreams. Anything I can do to help, support, encourage, inform in terms of real estate, personal finance, goal setting, I would love to help, be a part of your journey.
So definitely connect with him, follow him, and support him on all social media platforms. Darren, thank you so much for coming to the table tonight. You shared some powerful nuggets with our listeners, and I can't wait to invite you back.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashley. It was an honor, a privilege, and I'm really thankful for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, and I look forward to continuing to connect. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
So I would like to give a special thanks to my intern, Sarah, from Tennessee State University, and my intern, Vontaria, from Winston-Salem State University. You all may follow me on Facebook at Ashley Little and on Instagram at _Ashley A. Little. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Creating Your Seat at the Table, where Ashley speaks with corporate professionals, celebrities, entrepreneurs, authors, and speakers who are transitioning or have transitioned to entrepreneurship.